Morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. Back down here at the Pathfinder Outdoor Classroom and back in another segment of 10 Minutes to Better Land Nav. We're going to start looking at the interior portion of our maps today. And so the first thing we need to do is understand what different colors and different shapes are inside that map so that we can better understand what we're looking at when we plan routes. So things from terrain features themselves, represented by contour lines, also things like roads, buildings, waterways, wetlands, all those things are things that we can discern from looking at that map if we understand what we're looking at to begin with. So let's talk first about the 5 basic colors on a map, and then we'll open up a map and we'll look at that. So our map colors are black, red, green, blue, and brown. Black is going to denote buildings and structures that are man-made. It can also be unimproved roads and trails, and things like that can be annotated in black. Red is generally going to be some type of an improved road or a highway, depending on how it's depicted on the map. Green is going to be vegetation. The lighter green is less vegetation. The darker green is heavier vegetation. Blue is always going to be water. That's kind of a no-brainer. And then brown is generally used for your contour lines, but it can also be used for section squares within the map if you have a map that has section squares built for surveying on it as well. So those will be the main colors we'll be looking at today on the map, and we'll talk through those on a live map for you guys to look at. Okay, so looking at this map, you can see black here in the cemetery, black in the names of certain things, identifiers, okay, benchmarks, names of townships, names of cemeteries, things like that, names of churches. Those things are in black, and you can see that these trails are in black. And then you have an improved road here in red, and that's pretty much the only improved road in this area of the map. The rest of the stuff is all wildlife area, so you're not going to see it. But you can see that certain names are in black of information. There's a pipeline here, also denoted in black. Run Creek, the name is denoted in black. So black is used quite a bit on maps, but it's all informational or man-made stuff. And then red obviously is the improved road we talked about, and sometimes black denotes trails as well, like these trails here on the map, all right? Green is everywhere on this map, obviously, because this is a wildlife area. Again, the darker the green, the heavier the vegetation. The lighter the green, the less the vegetation. Now, blue obviously is water, so you have a creek here that runs through. You have a small stream or creek here as well. You have a pond here. Now you can see that the brown is all these squiggly contour lines on the map, and we'll talk more about what those mean in a few minutes and how they show the topography of the land in 2 dimensions. That's basically what a map is, a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional space when it comes to topographic maps. But you can see that there's a lot of brown on this map. Now these numbers here, they're kind of a reddish brown, I guess. They're really not red, but they're really not brown either. Those are section markers, and they denote a section that's 1 square mile by 1 square mile. So this section 27 here is 1 square mile here, or 640 acres, all right? But you can see that there's also grid lines inside that, and the grid lines on this map are blue, and those denote 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, okay? So blue can also be used for grid lines on the map. All right, guys, so we had a quick look at a map and looked at the colors on the map and what those colors represent. That gives us a better understanding of what that map is telling us. Now, beyond that, we talked about brown being those contour lines and our contour interval being 20 feet according to the information on the marginal data of our map. Now we need to look at those contour lines a little closer and understand what type of terrain features those contour lines represent, as they are a 2-dimensional image of 3-dimensional space. Remember with these contour lines that the closer these contour lines are together, the steeper the terrain. So when we get to things like a cliff, which I've got an asterisk on here, you'll see that those contour lines are very, very close together. And again, the further they're spread out, the more gentle that slope is. All right, the order of these terrain features is not going to exactly match military doctrine, but I've set it up in a way that makes it very easy to navigate in this environment in eastern woodlands, and for sake of purpose that we're out here in the wilderness. We're out here to hike, we're out here to camp, we're out here to hunt, we're out here to fish and forage and things like that. And so these terrain features are going to help us ease into navigation by terrain feature association later, all right? So hilltop, saddle, draw, ridge, and valley. Those are going to be the big ones. All right, so for sake of demonstration, before we get to the map, an enclosed line like that is going to be a hilltop. Generally going to be on the high ground, obviously, and it may or may not have a number inside of it denoting the elevation, which makes it easy to count contour lines down to give you an elevation of lower ground as well. If you have two of those hilltops that are side by side, in between those is your saddle. What will happen is you'll have contour lines here that are doing something like this, and it depends on where those contour lines are going. And we'll just draw it like this for sake of purpose. Okay? This is the draw. This is where the water is going to go downhill. These lines will be pointed up toward the high ground. Here, 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 here. All right? This land out here, we're going to talk about next, is your spur. All right? So we've got hilltop, saddle, draw. Our ridge is really like this first, in between or at this first contour line right here that runs along those two hilltops. You can't walk across these hilltops without going to lower ground first. So really that first contour line around is considered the ridge line, okay? This would be the ridge, this would be the ridge, all right? And then your valley is going to be down here at the bottom where all this is flowing, and there's higher ground up here somewhere that water's flowing down from. Maybe you have a hilltop up here somewhere, or over here you have a couple of hilltops. And this going down here is where your water is going to be, and this in between high ground is going to be your valley. So now looking at a map, you see this and this are hilltops, all right? You see where all this stuff is going downhill, eventually goes to water. These are your draws here, okay? Your ridge line is across here on this first contour line. You have a draw that comes down through here, and you have another hilltop here with a cliff, which we'll talk about in a minute, but you have water at the bottom, and this is the valley. Where these draws are going to empty into becomes your valley. So you have hilltop, saddle in between the hilltops, ridge line on that first contour line by the hilltops. You have draws that are coming down away from the hilltop, and you have a valley at the bottom between two pieces of high ground. Okay, guys, so we talked about hilltop, saddle, draw, ridge, valley. Now, we're going to talk about 5 what I would call minor terrain features. And I say minor, but I have an asterisk on the cliff. Obviously, that's not something you want to have to navigate across if you're trying to go from point A to point B. You're going to have to circumvent that somehow. However, most of these are things that you're not going to have to worry about too much. We're going to talk about spur, cliff, depression, cut, and fill. Cut and fill are mainly going to be around roads and construction. And most of the time, you're going to be trying to avoid that stuff anyway. A depression is going to be a low spot in the ground. It is denoted by some type of a shape with lines going inward like this on the map. There's very few of those on this map, but we'll find one to show you. A depression, okay? Generally, out here in eastern woodlands, most of these depressions are full with water. That's usually the way it works. A spur is really part of or on both sides of a draw. Okay, so when you look at this map, I want to find one that's not as confusing for you. Let's talk about this right here, okay? You can see this right here as your draw, okay? Now here's your draw. It's going up toward higher ground, all right? You got high ground here, high ground here. You can see here, this is a draw coming down. This land on both sides of the draw is the spur, okay? So again, if this is your draw coming down with this water coming downhill, that's a spur. And this is a spur that's got a hilltop on it. This is a spur over here, all right? Now, you also have cliffs on here because this is a cliff. You see how close these contour lines are together versus how spread out they are here. Once they start getting close together like this, you have a cliff. Okay, I don't see an actual depression annotated on this map anywhere. However, there's lots of areas like this that are in the lowest ground possible that have a lot of dots inside. There's a couple more of them over here, and right here. And on this map, that denotes a wetland area. And because they're in low ground, the majority of the time, as I said, they may be full of water. But if they're not full of water 100% of the time, they're not going to show up blue. So it's a circle with these dots inside of it for a wetland area, but it's actually a depression in the ground that will hold water certain times of the year. All right, so there's only one cut and fill on this map that I can find, and it's right here. And you can see that there's a lake here. And there is a cut that's been taken across here. You can see that by the dark line. And the fill is all this dirt with the lines going the opposite directions from the fill, where they've raised this ground higher to build a land bridge across this. And there's probably a dam there of some sort, with a drainage or something like that. One's probably overspill into the other. All right, so that covers spur, cliff, depression, cut, fill. Again, those are kind of minor terrain features and stuff you're not going to be too concerned about navigating over land using terrain association. However, if you're looking for some type of land bridge or something like that over a lake, cut and fill might be your ticket. Cliffs you obviously want to avoid while you're doing route planning, so it's important to understand what they are. And then a spur, very simple, is really the land mass, the sloping ground on both sides of a draw is your spur. So it's really not a major league concern, because if you know where the draw is, you know where the spurs are as well. So that's why we go with these 5 major terrain features for the Pathfinder School. All right, guys, I appreciate your views and I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, all our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back to another video in 10 minutes to better land nav as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.